As morbid as it sounds, and you'll see in a moment that the pun is very much intended, we will all end up like Lazarus, not reanimated as how our gospel ends, but dead. Not exactly the best way to start a homily during a pandemic, but hey, it's easier to take homiletic risks when the church is empty. It's an important distinction to note with Lazarus that he wasn't resurrected. He was reanimated. Christ put life back in his dead body, rather than being resurrected body and soul. For example, had Christ been reanimated as Lazarus was, he would have emerged covered in blood and scars from his passion, rather than unrecognizable by his closest disciples. The reason I point out the inevitable march towards our own mortality is because despite the continued mentioning and the assumed understanding that we all realize that we're immortal, especially now, we tend to do very little to prepare for what comes next. But what comes next should be the reason that we prioritize the obligations of our faith and live our faith in this world despite the world's hostility towards that faith. But were we to ask ourselves the very basic question, why are we Catholic? Would our answer be centered around the eternal and everlasting, or would it be something far more pedantic? I'm Catholic because my parents were. We're Catholic because we get a discount at the school. I go to certain masses because they're convenient times that I can then sandwich between other things in my schedule that carry far more priority and importance. In a very real way, we've taken a faith and a church founded by God himself, steeped in tradition, mystery, transcendence, and awe, and turned it into a punchline. The things that make us uniquely Catholic have become the butt of jokes, comedians, TV shows, movies, and even our own profession of faith. Phrases like Catholic guilt and I went to Catholic school are now the punchline rather than us understanding that we're not perfect and needing to understand that we're not perfect lest we fall into eternal damnation, and the ability to be educated in our rich traditions and have our characters formed in a way that is offered in no other academic institution. So why is this? Are we embarrassed? Are we shy? Are we afraid? Are we more ready to betray and deny Jesus, as we'll see his closest apostles do soon, than actually stand up and defend who we are and what we believe? Or is it something more simple? Do we just not get it? Do we just not fully understand the faith we claim to profess? Are we frustrated because our education in the faith was or is lacking? And because we don't understand something, we dismiss it as stupid or irrelevant or something that's not worth believing in the first place. I speak not from a position of judgment, but of empathy. My education of the faith growing up was poor. I didn't attend Catholic grade school. The faith taught to me in high school was weak, and the parishes that I grew up in never challenged me. Everything was comfortable, simple, non-confrontational, lots of gray areas, and no conviction. Then all of a sudden I was confronted with adulthood and with the real world, although the phrase assault and battery might be more accurate, and my faith got challenged. I didn't understand it, so I dropped it. Oddly enough, the only reason I ended up pursuing the faith was because of my vocation. Had God not called me so strongly to the priesthood, I would probably have never pursued my faith at all. We can't allow things like frustration and a lack of understanding to push us away from God. We can't allow the secular world, which is hell-bent upon, once again, fully intended, to distract us from the reality of eternity. We will all die, hopefully not from this stupid virus, and we will all come face to face with divine judgment. That's not a bad thing. That is the possibility of the eternal reward that God has for those who remain faithful to him, despite the obstacles and hardships that this world presents us with. There's an atheist who talks about how this world's problems and pitfalls are the perfect example of why God does not exist. A good and loving God, he says, would never create such a harsh and terrible world if he really loved us, and certainly wouldn't allow some virus that started from eating a bat to bring the world to a screeching halt and even have potentially his own churches dark and empty during the sacred Triduum. Well, it's not hard to love God and be faithful to him when everything is perfect. It's not hard to believe and have a strong faith when everything is roses and sunshine and non-pandemic-y. It's the ones who maintain that faith, that trust, that confidence in the eternal despite the harshness and the obstacles that exist here in the temporary, that are then rewarded with that everlasting life. We have to have faith despite the world around us. We have to have faith despite whatever barriers might try to stop us from loving God. A tough world, a world that challenges us and tests us and tries to knock us off the path of life and resurrection is how you know that the reward is worth it. It's how you know that the end result is worth fighting for, and as so many thousands have proven before us, worth dying for.